After everything that has occurred this season, the regular season is now over, and the finals are upon us. Just trying to remember, I usually do something about, these type of videos where like we talk about the finals teams and the teams that haven't made it. Oh God. But first, a lament. This season has been far better than last year, where basically every other team were being absolutely bulked by about two teams. This year has shown that the style and play of football have gotten a lot better as each team has actually risen above and actually made the finals race quite close. We've seen unexpected teams rise up and unexpected teams go down. It's truly been probably one of the closest seasons the NRL has had for the last couple of years, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But for these 8 teams, they probably would need to go to the drawing board. In all seriousness, how did Brisbane mess this up? A team with a record of 13 wins and 11 losses failed to make the finals. Cast your mind back to round 14. The Brisbane Broncos were 4th place. And ever since then, they got a couple of wins and they also got a lot of losses and just ever so slowly started to fall down the NRL ladder to the point we're in now where they have officially finished 9th place and have basically missed the finals. For me, it seemed like ever since Game 3 of State of Origin, Brisbane have just missed something. Like, it came down to was them and Canberra pretty much charging for the finals, and Brisbane went on to lose back-to-back 50-point games at Suncorp, and then they needed to win against the Dragons to have some hope, in which they also lost. And you got to think, well, with this squad that they've had, I know Adam Reynolds was set to be out for this week, but they had Adam Reynolds playing majority of the games at halfback. You had Tyson Gamble, who was going really well. Patrick Carrigan, who's basically the breakout star from this year's Queensland team for State of Origin. Herbie Farnworth, Katoni Staggs, Selwyn Cobbo, Corey Oates was playing really good football. Tamati Martin's also become a breakout player for the Broncos. It's honestly one of the biggest fumblings of a finals I can remember pretty much ever since the 2019 Knights. I feel pretty bad for Brisbane fans. Not really, but just generally because they've played some really good football this year and we won't see them in the finals. I do know that they are bringing in Reece Walsh, so hopefully there'll be enough to get the charge in for them to make the finals next year, but I just can't imagine how they've done this over. In retrospect, I think the St George Illawarra Dragons have actually had a very decent season. They've got a lot of players now coming in through the side that has come in from the second half of the season, which has brought the team into some very decent results. And obviously, with the basically the redemption arc that is Ben Hunt, having arguably one of the best seasons he's ever had, and honestly could potentially come up in the ranks of a potential Dally M winnership. Probably not, but might be close because I'm basically going to give it to Cleary anyways. But they did finish the season quite well, basically put Brisbane out of their misery and not making the finals, and have honestly been alright. Like, I feel like maybe with only like a little bit of minute changes, I think the Dragons can very much push themselves into the top 8. And now we get to the Manly Warringah Seagulls, the team that I predicted would win the minor premiership this year. Remember kids, don't do your season predictions in January. And it's weird to say, 9 and 15. They came 9 and 15. That is something, it's such a weird record for Manly because there were points where Manly were actually going all right. Yes, they lost their first 2 games, but they started winning basically 4 on the trot. Then COC for Talakai happened. They lost a couple, but then they won again, lost to Brisbane, and then they started losing a few games, beat the Warriors, beat the Tigers, only just lost to the Cowboys. They beat the Storm, but almost blew that game. Actually, I should bring up that Cowboys game. They blew that when they were up by like 14 points, so that was a weak story arc. They belted the Knights, and then came the jersey. Basically, the Manly Ringer Seagulls decided to release a Pride jersey, and about 8 of the players straight up just said that they were not going to play in it because it goes against their religious beliefs. But one thing that doesn't go against their religious beliefs is one of their teammates and their mates stabbing a priest in the back. But, you know, so yeah, that's fine, but yeah, no rainbows. And basically ever since then, they basically just bottled their season. They lost to the Roosters, lost to Parramatta, lost to the Titans, lost to the Sharks, got belted by the Raiders, and lost by 1 point against the Bulldogs. So, taste the rainbow, I guess. I honestly think the Bulldogs have done quite well with their beginning circumstances. Obviously, there was a lot of contention in terms of their coaching, but I really feel over the second half of the season, they've really started to come off very well. You see Matt Burton starting to develop into an absolute bloody thunder bastard by absolutely hoofing the ball. You're starting to see Shup, Karaz, and Addo-Carr starting to find back their form. Tavita Pangai Jr. has been solid, and I honestly think with the bringing in of Alami Kikia next season, I definitely can see the Bulldogs going into the top 8. Oh god, what if they win? Jason David would have a field day. Bankstown would be mental, to be fair. Do we really want that? Actually, I'd like to see the Bulldogs go in. I think they've actually been pretty good. They've actually been a very exciting team to watch, to say the least. So I think they've done okay in terms of circumstances, and I feel like they can definitely push themselves into challenging for the 8 next season when Kikia does come in. The Gold Coast Titans now coming in 13th. I think they've actually done very well in terms of circumstances, because out of all the games they've played, there's only been about 2 or 3, maybe even 4 matches where they've actually been like properly belted, which for a team that's come 13th, I think honestly the Titans shouldn't really have come into the bottom 4. It's just they were just unfortunate to lose some of their matches. I do know that one of the few wins they did get, round 4 against the Tigers, was the worst game of rugby league I have ever seen. And you can literally watch me in the live stream at half time, basically losing my brain cells, basically evaporating after watching whatever the hell that match was. But they've got really good upside, I feel like. They're obviously going to get Kieran Foran in next year from Manly. And I've already seen they've got a very good young core. Tanner Boyd's actually stepped up really well at halfback. Bo Fermor is, I honestly think Bo Fermor is probably the best player for the Titans, and they really need to hold on to him. And yes, I do think that he's better than David Fafita and Tino Fasor-Malawi. So if there's one of those 3 players that I feel like the Titans really do need to hang on to, it is Bo Fermor. You've also got Greg Manju as well, going quite well this season. It's just, I don't think they deserved bottom 4, in all honesty. So I feel like next year, I definitely feel they can be challenging for the finals. Well, that can't be said about the next team. As a Knights fan, I almost instantly knew during the preseason that the Knights were not going to have a good season. There were 2 things that made me make that decision. The Achilles injury of Jaden Brayley and the release of Mitchell Pearce. This instantly made me feel like, oh crap, we don't have a halfback, we don't know what to do. And after the first 2 weeks, the Knights were actually playing some decent football, and then they played Penrith, and Mitch Barnett decided to, how do I say this? I basically tried to kill one of the Penrith players, and basically became a whole downward spiral after that. And we did get a couple of wins, but it was against teams that weren't teams that were above us, but basically, you know, it was wins against the Titans, it was wins against the Warriors, those type of matches, and even the Tigers as well. And even in some of them, we kind of didn't deserve to win. I think that away game at Campbelltown against the Tigers, we definitely did not deserve to win that. We were horrible. But there's obviously been a few issues that have come through with the season. Obviously, Kalen Ponga and his concussion. So I 100% agree that Kalen Ponga should not have played for the rest of the season. I think it was obviously player well-being is the most important factor when it comes to the NRL. And I feel like because he suffered 3 head knocks in about a month, I think it was the right decision to have him to have him not play. I mean, look, come on, like, we're halfway through the season. We weren't going to make finals. I think anyone else who thought that is delusional, to say the very least. But I have seen when he has played, he's kind of turned into Dane Gagai in the sense of he plays okay for club, but plays really well when it comes to Origin. Now, people were saying basically with Kalen Ponga in his performance in Game 3, where he played very well, basically along the same lines of like, oh, he just needs good players around him for him to actually play well, which is also a bit of a sneak diss of basically saying that Kalen Ponga needs to be carried, which from this whole rhetoric over the last couple of years of Kalen Ponga, you know, being meant to be one of the, arguably the best player the Knights have, basically trying to carry them to this, push them for these like final spots. It's very, it's not the way that it's been seen. It's like, it should be that, but no, he has to get carried by other players. That's a bit weird. And also, I don't like Adam O'Brien. I'm just going to be completely honest here. I think it's fine that we lose, but the one thing that makes it really, really bad is the whole, how do I say, his press conferences. Just some of the shit he has said is absolutely ridiculous. There was like one where he said that he's not an egotist, but I remember back in 2020, I think it was around when he was drunk at the Newcastle race course and he was being ushered out by security and he went, "Do you know who I am?" Basically, you know, the 6 immortal words that make any person with some sort of fame sound like an up themselves prick. And also the quote of, "I know how to win premierships." It was because he was the assistant coach when it came to the Melbourne Storm and the Sydney Roosters. If anything, he probably had as much effect as being the bloody water boy. Just ridiculous. The Knights need to change. There have been good parts. I mean, Dominic Young, I think he's had a really good debut season. When Jaden Brayley did came back from his injuries, he was actually pretty good and actually helped the team and actually making games close. For example, the Canberra game recently. But yeah, the Knights need to, we need to, I know it's weird, we need another rebuild because, man, the Knights really love their rebuilds. We've been rebuilding ever since like 2014. It's a bit of a lull season, to say the very least, for the New Zealand Warriors, but I will say I'm actually quite concerned for them next year. Obviously, the big news of Reece Walsh going to rejoin his former club in Brisbane is going to have a bit of an effect on the Warriors team on trying to get players in. They've got good players, but it's just, they haven't even won many matches. I know, basically, they did win a couple when they were over in New Zealand. They have played quite better since going back there, but it's just, they might string around a couple of wins, but I'm kind of worried to think that the Warriors might be challenging for the spoon next year. I mean, they kind of were challenging from like the outskirts this year, but I feel like they are probably definite contenders for this year. Oh boy, okay, the West Tigers. So, I basically, in my season predictions back in January, predicted that the West Tigers would come last, basically citing that the players weren't good enough and they had lost several of their players in the transfers last season, to the fact of there is a very toxic kind of atmosphere when it comes to the West Tigers. It's sad to say, it's just, the Tigers have just been absolutely horrid. There have been games where they should probably deserve to win. For example, the home game against the Knights, I feel like they should have won. The Cowboys game where they basically got robbed, I don't care. That was a robbery. They should have won that game. It's just a toxic atmosphere, to say the least. I mean, everybody probably knows about the whole Westlife podcast thing, wanting to have the chairman of the West Tigers on, and basically the CEO basically made himself the biggest twat out of probably any of the current working CEOs in the NRL. But it's just it's so unfortunate. I think like the whole combination of this was the game against the Roosters where they lost 72-6, being officially the worst result in the West Tigers club history. It is being even the worst result if you factor in the Balmain Tigers lineage, and only the second biggest loss when you factor in the Western Suburbs lineage. But the one that it does get beaten by like a 68-0 loss back in 1910. So, a result as bad as about 112 years in the making. It's just, I really don't see any hope for the Tigers. I mean, I hope they do try to bounce back and try to sign someone. I think it's going to be between them and the Warriors for the spoon next year. It's just, I don't think they're going to be just as bad as like the Knights from 2015 to 2017, but starting to be in the making of it, unfortunately. So that's the Fallen taken out of the way. Let's go into the proper finals matches. So you got Penrith against Parramatta in the qualifying final. This I feel like for Parramatta, this is it. I think this is probably their last chance for the next couple of years of them trying to go for a title. I mean, all the momentum is currently in their favour. They've beaten the Storm twice this year. They've beaten Penrith twice this year. Penrith do have all their players that were rested last week coming back. I think this should be a fantastic match, so it's going to be very hard to say who wins this. I'd probably say, for Parramatta's sake, they probably need to win this because we know about their current streak of making it to the semi-finals. It's a bit of a problem. Sharks Cowboys. Currently, it's not decided who is hosting yet because this is being recorded Sunday morning. But I mean, the only way the Cowboys get second is if the Knights beat the Sharks, and that's just not happening. But I feel like the Cowboys, regardless, can be able to win this game. The Sharks are one of the weirdest teams, to say the least. They're second, but no one's really kept a close eye on them. But I think it can work in the Sharks' favour, so it's going to be another interesting qualifying final. You've got the Storm and Raiders. The Raiders beating out the Broncos, making it to the finals, and the Storm having a home elimination final. I think the Storm should be able to do fine. And then you got Roosters, Rabbitohs playing in the second week in a row at the same stadium. It's going to be hard because obviously Latrell, if he keeps his cool but brings in finals Trell, the Rabbitohs should be able to win this, but you don't know in these circumstances. And here, right now, is what I'm going to present as what I think the grand final for the 2022 season will be. I think personally this fits in terms of like a narrative circumstance, as it's between the Penrith Panthers going for their back-to-back, whilst the Parramatta Eels finally making it to the grand final with a chance to vanquish the demons of 36 years past.